Daf Yomi, Tractate Zevachim, page 84. Top of the page is the words Tered. It's the last word of some idea from the previous Amud. I guess we can find out what it is. Okay, Reish Lakish, it's just the previous, just to catch it up for context. Reish Lakish says, in summary, with regard to a meal offering that comes by itself and does not accompany another offering, according to the statements of all the Tanaim in the Mishnah, it shall not descend once it ascended, either because it is fit to be consumed by the fire, or because it comes by itself. According to the statements of Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Akiva, okay, now we're on today's daf, on 84 on the top, Tered. Even that meal offering shall descend. Take it down. As it is not similar to lambs. המלכה הבאה עם הזבח לדברי רבן גמליאל or Yehoshua lo tered לדברי כולן tered. With regard to a meal offering that comes with an animal offering, either a burnt offering or a peace offering, according to the statements of Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yehoshua, it shall not descend, as it is meant for consumption by the fire. According to the statements of everyone else, meaning Rabbi Shimon and the Tanaim of the Braita, it shall descend, as it is neither offered by itself nor is it an animal. And let's continue here. Nesachim aboim mifnei atzmon לדברי כולן ירדו, לדברי רבן גמליאל לרבי שמעון לא ירדו. נסחים aboim עם הזבח, לדברי כולן ירדו, לדברי רבן גמליאל לחודש lo yeldu. Reish Lakish continues, with regard to libations that come by themselves, according to the statements of everyone, meaning Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Yehoshua, they shall descend, but according to the statements of Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Shimon, they shall not descend. With regard to libations that come with an animal offering, according to the statements of everyone, they shall descend, while according to the statement of Rabban Gamliel alone, they shall not descend. Pshita, it's obvious. Isn't it obvious? Mincha haba me'ifnei atzma, yitzrich aleh, echid rave, dama rave, mitnadev adam minchat nesachim b'chol yoyim. Isn't it obvious? The Gemara answers, it was necessary for him to state the halacha in the case of a meal offering that comes by itself, and this is according to the statements of Rave. As Rave says, a person can volunteer to bring a meal offering that normally accompanies libations on any day, even without offering the libations and animal offering that it normally accompanies. Although the summary is itself obvious, it is nevertheless stated to indicate that it is possible to offer such a meal offering. הצטריך עלי דקרא מקרב לו למחר וליום אחר. The Gemara asks if the intent of his summary is to express his agreement with the statement of Rava. Then let Reish Lakish teach us explicitly that the halacha is in accordance with the statement of Rava. The Gemara answers it was necessary for the case of libations that come with an animal offering, as the halacha in such a case that he may sacrifice libations the next day and on a later day, sometime after sacrificing the animal offering that they accompany. Accordingly, it may enter your mind to say that, since the Master says that the verse, and their meal offering, and their libations, Numbers 29:18, indicates that libations may be offered at night, and the phrase, and their meal offering, and their libations, indicates that libations may be offered the next day, and on a later day, perhaps libations offered on a later date than the animal itself are to be considered as libations which come by themselves. And Rabbi Shimon would concede that they shall not descend. Reish Lakish therefore teaches us the case of libations that accompany an animal offering to indicate that such libations are still considered as those that accompany an animal offering, and that they shall descend from the altar. Okay. Elu imalu lo yerdu halan הווי היועץ והצומש שנשחט חוץ לזמן וחוץ לקוימוי ושקיבלו פסולים מזוג ודמו. These are the items that even if they were disqualified, if they ascended the altar, they shall not descend. Blood, sacrificial portions, or limbs of a burnt offering, any of which were left overnight off the altar, or that emerge from the temple courtyard, or that become ritually impure, or that come from an animal that was slaughtered with the intent to sacrifice it beyond its designated time or outside its designated area, or an offering that people unfit to perform the temple service collected and then sprinkled its blood. Yehuda Omer, Shenishchat Belayla Venishbach Dama Yatza Dama Chutz Laklaim Im Alta Tered. Rabbi Shimon Omer לא תרד, שהיה פסולו בקודש. שרבי שמעון אומר, כל שפסולו בקודש, הקודש מקבלו, לא היה פסולו בקודש, אין הקודש מקבלו. Rabbi Yehuda says, in the case of a sacrificial animal that was slaughtered at night, or one whose blood was spilled on the floor of the temple without its being collected in a vessel, or one whose blood emerged outside the curtains, meaning outside the temple courtyard, even if it descended upon the altar, it shall descend. Rabbi Shimon says, in all these cases, if it ascended, it shall not descend, because its disqualification occurred in sanctity. As Rabbi Shimon says, with regard to any unfit offering whose disqualification occurred in sanctity, meaning in the course of the temple service, the sacred area renders the offering acceptable, and if it ascended onto the altar, it shall not descend. But with regard to any offering whose disqualification did not occur in sanctity, but rather was unfit initially, the sacred area does not render the offering acceptable. ואלו שלא היה פסולן בקודש, הרויבה והנרבה והמוקצה, והנבל והאתנן, המחיר והקלעים בטרפה, היוצא דופן ובעלי מומין. רבי עקיבא מכשיר בעלי מומין. רבי חנינא סגן הכהנים אומר, דוחה היה אבא את בעלי מומין מעל גבי המזבח. And these are the offerings whose disqualification did not occur in sanctity. An animal that copulated with a person, and an animal that was the object of bestiality, and an animal that was set aside for idol worship, and an animal that was worshipped as a deity, and an animal that was given as a payment to a prostitute, or as the price of a dog, and an animal born of a mixture of different kinds, and an animal with a wound that will cause it to die within 12 months, an animal born by cesarean section, and unblemished animals. Rabbi Akiva deems blemished animals fit in the sense that if they ascended, they shall descend. Rabbi Hanina, deputy high priest, says, my father would reject blemished animals from upon the altar. כשם שאם עלו לא ירדו, כך אם ירדו לא יעלו. וכולן שעשו חיים לראש המזבח. ירדו אלה שעשו חיים לראש המזבח, תרד שחטא בראש המזבח, יפשיט וינתתיה במקומה. Concerning those animals that, if they ascended, do not descend, just as if they ascended the altar, they shall not descend, so too, they descended, they shall not ascend. They shall not then ascend. And all of them, that if they ascend, they do not descend. If they ascended to the top of the altar alive, they descend. As an animal is fit for the altar only after it is slaughtered. A burnt offering that ascended to the top of the altar alive shall descend. And one does not slaughter an animal on top of the altar ab initio. But if one slaughtered the animal on top of the altar, he should flay it and cut it into pieces in its place, and it is not removed from the altar. Okay, that's the Mishnah. And now we start the Gemara, the Talmud of this Mishnah here. Here we go. Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer Zos Hi Ha'ola Hare'elu Shlosha Miyutin Prat L'nishchata V'shenishchata B'layla V'nishbach Dama V'chayotzi Dama Chutz HaKlaim Im She'im Al Tered. It is taught in Braita that Rabbi Yehuda says the verse from which is derived the halacha that items that ascended upon the altar shall not descend states. This is the law of the burnt offering. It is the burnt offering on the pyre upon the altar. Leviticus 6:2. These are the three terms. These are three terms of exclusion used in the verse. This, it, and the, from which it is derived that three instances are excluded from this halacha. A sacrificial animal that was slaughtered at night, and one whose blood was spilled, and one whose blood emerged outside the curtains, meaning outside the temple courtyard. With regard to these cases, the halacha is that if one of them ascended upon the altar, it shall descend. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Oila eini ela oila kasheira min al-ravis shenishchata b'layla v'nishbach damach v'chesheira yotze dama chutz l'klayim v'halan v'yotze v'yatameh v'shenishchat chutz lizbano v'chutz limkomo v'shikiv lo pesulin v'zarku es damo. Rabbi Shimon says, from the usage of the term burnt offering, I have derived only with regard to a fit burnt offering that it shall not descend. From where is it derived? The verse also includes a sacrificial animal that was disqualified, such as one that was slaughtered at night, or one or whose blood was spilled, or whose blood emerged outside the curtains, meaning outside the temple courtyard, or that was left overnight, or that emerged from the temple courtyard, or that became ritually impure, or that came from an animal that was slaughtered with the intent to sacrifice it beyond its designated time or outside its designated area, or an offering that people unfit to perform the temple service collected and then sprinkled its blood. In addition, from where is it derived that the following are also included in this halacha? Those offerings whose blood is to be placed below the red line that divided between the upper and lower halves of the external altar, a burnt offering, a guilt offering, or a peace offering. But it was placed above the red line, and it's an offering whose blood is to be placed above the red line, that had its blood placed below the red line, and those offerings whose blood is to be placed outside on the external altar, that had their blood placed inside in the sanctuary, and those offerings whose blood is to be placed inside, that had their blood placed outside. And in addition, with regard to a paschal offering or sin offering that were slaughtered not for their own sake, from where is it derived that if they ascended upon the altar they shall not descend? The verse states the law of the burnt offering, which included in one law all items that ascend upon the altar, establishing the principle that if they ascended the altar they shall not descend. Yachol shani merabeh harova v'hanirva v'hamuktzeh v'hanevad v'etnan u'mechil v'klayim v'treva yozid v'fen tamalom zois. One might have thought that I should also include an animal that copulated with a person, and an animal that was the object of bestiality, and an animal that was set aside for idol worship, and an animal that was worshipped as a deity, and an animal that was given as a payment to a prostitute or as the price of a dog, and an animal born of a mixture of diverse kinds, and an animal that is a treifa, and an animal born by cesarean section. Therefore, the verse states this to exclude these types of disqualifications which descend even after they have ascended the altar. Next amendment, 84b. And the Gemara asks, and to what did you see as a reason to include these and exclude these? The Gemara answers, after noting that the verse included, now I'm talking about 84b, and subsequently the verse excluded, I say the following claim with regard to what to include and what to exclude. I will include those whose disqualification was in sanctity, meaning in the course of the temple service, and rule that if they descended, they shall not descend. If they descended, they shall not descend. And I will exclude these whose disqualification was not in sanctity, and rule that if they ascended, they shall descend. Okay, that's 84a, going even a little bit on to first line of 84b.